Johnny here for Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, here to talk to you about the Ford Maverick. Now, there's been things going on in the last couple weeks that will have us really wondering what's going on with the Ford Maverick. So I'm here to answer just that because I'm here to help. That's the goal of this channel. So like and subscribe, join along in the community. If you've got interesting intel, please add it in the comment section. So we're going to be talking about the Ford Maverick. What everyone is assuming is the ST. So there's been spy photos. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, are we really getting a Ford Maverick ST? And what does this mean for Ford? So we'll look at all the options. And of course, we're also going to be talking about Ford Maverick production versus sales, because really my goal here is that no one gets confused and mixed up in all the news, that we're all sort of on the same page and we have the same intel. Now, if I'm missing any intel, like I said, just throw it in the comments section. But let's jump right in. Let's put the pedal to the metal and let's talk about what everyone is assuming is a Ford Maverick ST. So we've seen the spy photos. The spy photos, fantastic job, Ford Authority. Thank you so much, or Maverick Truck Club. So we've got spy photos from those two fantastic sources. Love reading up on those internet channels. I do like reading the news quite a bit. So let's talk about just that. Both of them did spot the intercooler, which automatically, yes, having a different intercooler, having a more performance-oriented intercooler does lead us to believe that we're getting a more performance-oriented Maverick. But I don't think that necessarily means that we can just put a nail in the coffin and say it's an ST, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But let's just finish wrapping up really what this Maverick has been seen having. This prototype driving behind a closed course. So these spy photos were taken with probably a very powerful camera with, a high zoom lens that comes in even at extreme zoom. So a very expensive camera, extreme zoom, and still these photos were coming up a little pixelated. So clearly Ford does not necessarily want us seeing this. And I can understand why, because, the whole media truck, you could say, the whole media wheel has gotten turning. And everyone's assuming that this truck is going to be an ST. And I really don't think that's necessarily the case. What we do know is we've got a performance-oriented intercooler in the front. We've got wider fenders. Now, they camouflaged the fenders, and they definitely, I've looked closely. I've waited to put this news out because I really want to get my thoughts, think about all the possible options, and not just, assume what comes to mind first. Mind you, it could very well be an ST. But these fenders are wider, and then we've got the dual exhaust in the back. Now, the dual exhaust, definitely for me, style-wise, I'd love a Maverick with dual exhaust coming out the bumper. I'm down with that. That's very cool. That's right on, and that's rad. But speaking of things being rad, Ford's got a big choice here. Because if they bring this out as an ST, we're kind of, made to accept that the Maverick is more of an SUV car replacement in that. And we all know that this thing is made to replace Ford's low-priced vehicles. But if you make it an ST, well, that makes us think of what? Focus ST, Fiesta ST, which don't exist anymore. So yeah, could be a replacement. Or Edge ST, which is on the way out. Of course, we also have the Explorer ST. But even in the Explorer, what's exciting? What's going on? I think the Timberline is getting a lot of attention. And of course, when it comes to trucks. Now, if Ford so chooses to make this either a Rattler or a Tremor, this is going to cement more the Maverick's image as a truck and not a vehicle. And I think what's helping, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I think what's really helping the Maverick sell incredibly well is that people are going, holy smokes, that is a truck that doesn't cost a fortune. That's what's amazing for me about the Maverick, is that I can have a truck do truck things and not have it cost and take up, a good portion of the money that comes in a month. When you buy a truck and you want it to look good or great, you're going to be spending a lot of money. I'm going to be reviewing hopefully soon. I've already done the test drive and whatnot, an F-150 Tremor. And the thing is, 68,000 Canadian. I believe it's about 60,000 US. It looks amazing, and don't get me wrong, the Ford F-150 Tremor is a machine that I love. But that's going to be taking up, if I had one, a good portion of the money that comes in a month. And I think the Maverick, what just makes it amazing is that it's a truck that's low priced. So hear me out here. Dual exhaust. We have that both on the new F-150 Rattler and on the F-150 Tremor. Of course, STs also have dual exhaust. So not concluding anything here, but both Tremor and Rattler have bigger tires. And the Maverick, the FX4 package, it isn't all that, it is off-road, but it's not, mid-range or all-out off-road the way, let's say, a Raptor is. And Raptor, Tremor, Rattler, those are all models that require wider fenders. I've never seen a Ford ST, no matter what the model is, I can't think of a single Ford ST, whether it's the Fiesta, the Focus, the Edge, the Explorer, none of those need wider fenders because they don't have wider tires. But Rattler, F-150, Raptor, any really off-road oriented version, you have the real chance of kicking up stones and destroying your paint job or someone else's windshield / paint job. So the wider fenders make sense when we're talking about an off-road vehicle. So we've got the dual exhaust, we've got the fenders, and of course as an off-road vehicle, having a bigger intercooler in the front also makes sense because you need better cooling when you're off-roading and getting turbos to kick up. And anyways, speaking of turbos, what does the Maverick already have? It already has an incredible 2-liter engine. So that thing's producing just under 260 horsepower, 277 pound-feet of torque, 255 horsepower. So that's already a very powerful engine for the weight of the Maverick. The weight of the Maverick, we're looking at just under 3,700 pounds. And let's not get terms mixed up. In the comment section, very fair, someone said, hey, the Maverick weighs a ton, it's 5,800. The 5,800 pounds on the Maverick is the GVWR, so gross vehicle weight rating. And what your GVWR is, your gross vehicle weight rating, is how much weight you can have, on the vehicle, including the weight of the vehicle. So it's how much really weight can be down on the ground. So really your GVWR, 5,800 pounds minus, let's say, 3,700 pounds. Well, that lets you know how much legal weight payload you can have on the vehicle. So the Maverick weighs relatively a lightweight. If you compare it to pickups weighing generally between 5,000 to 6,000 pounds, 3,700 pounds or 3,658 or 88 with all that power on the 2-liter is fantastic. Now, if we think of the Escape, weighs basically the same, the Bronco Sport. Well, most of those are being sold with 1.5-liter EcoBoosts. And here's a little news flash, real important, real quick. I don't have a whole lot to say on it, but if you have a 1.5-liter Escape or Bronco Sport, you've got to realize that the oil separator has a recall on it. Your dealership is going to need to look it over and change the seals if need be on your oil separator. Because, well, it just seems that Ford, whatever's going on with these engine oil separators, this isn't the first time historically that Ford has had an oil separator that just isn't quite perfect. So they've got a lot of vehicles to recall. Get your vehicle inspected, but right back to the real deal. I think we might get a Maverick. What we're seeing as spy photos, this very well could be a Tremor or Rattler. Let's not just assume automatically it's an ST. We already have a very performance-oriented engine on the Maverick. It's the 2-liter turbo. I think personally what the Maverick needs more is, for a bit of street cred or off-road cred, it needs a bit more of an off-road package. The FX4 for me, I think it's fine. But the Maverick could benefit from a bit more of an off-road, rough and tough image. So that's my 2 cents. The only other thing I could think of is, maybe this is a 2.3-liter, and boy, would this ever have been a very tricky way to test out a 2.3-liter as a plug-in, because I'm thinking very much so this is eventually going to happen. Maverick's going to have to go plug-in, and the 2.3-liter power plant is, I think, going to be a plug-in for the Ranger, which the new Ranger, oh my goodness, the new model Ranger is looking amazing. And I think it only makes sense to have the 2.3-liter as the next plug-in, because then you also get to cover the Explorer. So you get to do, you get to really bring up your cafe average. So that's, you know, what your fleet average. There's these cafe rules that require that the corporate average for the fleet, for the fleet economy, that you need to be, soon it's going to be almost 50 miles per gallon, 49 miles per gallon. So car manufacturers need to get up on board and get things going. Now, talking about getting things going, I want us all as a community to be going in the right direction. So I want to talk just real quick, round out this video with a quick little talk so that no one gets misled on March numbers. So we just saw March numbers come out, March 2022, in case you're watching this in the future. March numbers, 8,695 units sold. Now, obviously, these are all pretty much reservations or someone's reservation order that got canceled and could have been sold as kind of a stock at a dealer. But this is, you know, at some point, these are all someone's order. Now, that doesn't mean that Ford built almost 9,000 Mavericks and that things are going a whole lot better. In reality, for March, Ford built less Mavericks than originally we had hoped for, and less than in February and January. So the microchip shortage is real. So if you're thinking that, you know, the microchip shortage is just a conspiracy, look at these amazing numbers for the Ford Maverick. They're the best numbers we've seen so far, pretty much out of a month. Well, their production number, how many were sold. So these are based actually on production from, give or take, depending where it's coming from, 3 to 7 weeks ago. You know, the time to transport these Mavericks to dealers and the time to then put them in clients' hands with signed contracts and those contracts sent back to Ford. Once Ford gets those contracts completed, perfectly signed, that's when the vehicle is considered sold. So that's what's going on there. Things for March were worse. You know, back in January, they built 77,842, and I think March numbers are going to be coming in that the Maverick will have gotten about around 5,500 built. So I'm still waiting, tried to find the exact numbers today, but waiting for that to come out and be more readily available. Now, I've got some good news. We're going to finish on it. You know what? Let's finish on a really good note. The Ford Maverick, despite the trouble we're having getting them, there's some good news. The Ford Maverick has actually doubled sales on the Santa Cruz, the Hyundai Santa Cruz, and has outsold the Ford Ranger. So for anyone that's saying that, you know, this is just a complete joke, that they're not getting, you know, we're not just ordering them up and getting them right off, that it's been sold out. All the news I've really been talking about, good and bad, for the last over half year. Well, there's some people, of course, this has left a bad taste for them, and they're saying, like, you know, this is just a complete joke. I'm going to go buy another brand. Well, Ford's having trouble delivering everyone their Ford Maverick because they sold so many. You know, people have told me that I'm completely wrong. Ford should have known that they'd sell a tremendous amount of these. Well, I'd like to point out the fact that they doubled the sales on the Santa Cruz. And the Santa Cruz is a fine, good, similar truck. The Ford Maverick has blown away Honda Ridgeline sales. Completely blown them out of the water. And it's even outsold the Ranger. So I think the whole point of this video, one of the points of this video really is just to give intel, give data. You get to make your own opinions, of course, and I love hearing your opinions in the comments section. But I do try to look at the data open-mindedly. And yes, things have been far from perfect, but there's a reason for it. The Maverick is unbelievably popular. It's a big deal to double the sales of what is essentially, you know, from the outside look, when you don't analyze anything, well, the Santa Cruz is another cool, small, reasonably sized truck. The interior of that, you know, I liked it actually a lot. The back windows and back glass I found a little small. So there's some design elements that just didn't, I find were, well, nothing's perfect. So hey, let's cut everyone a little bit of slack. Things aren't easy these days. And on that bombshell, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Help us out on the channel as we try to help you all out with information. And of course, often the best help is in the comments section because you all have really good intel as well. So please drop it down. And until next video, take care. Now, if you want to help the channel out, we're putting a poodle through some intensive athletic camps here. And these sports for the kids, they're pretty expensive. So if you want to help us out, do like and subscribe because that does help feed, dress, and pay the sports for a poodle. You know, these balloon hacky sack sports are very expensive. So help the channel out, hit that like button, give us a like. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week, and we wish you all more cars and more power.